how I came across the conclusion that all of these structures were designed to harness lightning. And this is by what I learned at the White Horse Hills of Wiltshire, England. I intuitively had the idea that the pyramids were powered by lightning, but I didn't understand the mechanisms of operation until I started looking at dielectric materials. Dielectrics, again, it's the secret in the stone, right? All of these stones are functional materials.
Right.
Black basalt storing heat, red granite for ultrasound, limestone for dielectric capacity of storing electric fields. There's a very specific reason that they chose all of these construction materials. And once you understand these properties, everything just starts to reveal itself. So here we have the Giza Plateau Chemical Manufacturing Plant. Sulfuric acid in the Great Pyramid. Hydrochloric acid in the Central Pyramid. And I haven't revealed my function of the third and final Menkaure pyramid, but it was operational and it was producing a chemical.
Now,
yes.
Go back to that photo.
Yeah.
Those things are enormous.
Oh, it's crazy, yeah.
And when I think about Chris Dunn's theory of the pyramids, right? His theory essentially is that Great Pyramid, whether the other two are involved or not, he does assume they're involved. He just doesn't have an explanation exactly for how it works. He doesn't reverse engineer the other two.
Right.
But when I look at those, I think that's got to have an extremely important role in whatever civilization lived around there
100%.
And built them.
Yes.
And when you think about something that provides energy to the entire civilization, that feels right.
Yes.
Because it's so monumental and so precise and so enormous.
Yep.
Now, when you look at there's nothing like those in the history of the earth. There's nothing like these things. Now, when you say that they're chemical processing plants for sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid for mining and metallurgy.
Yes.
It's not as wild of a theory. Right? It makes a lot of sense how that could work.
Yep.
I completely understand it, especially when you involve how the other pyramids are involved. But I just don't understand why it seems like such a benign sort of like simple explanation for such an enormous, monumental, incredible feat of humans.
Okay. So, but that's only the chemical manufacturing application. So today, if we could harness the power from a lightning strike, you can power a city for a year off of one lightning bolt. It is a massive amount of electrical energy. It is the most powerful electrical phenomenon on this planet is lightning. So by harnessing lightning, they could produce, or harness rather, vast amounts of electric energy, which could then be distributed throughout the civilization. I don't get into that application because, again, I don't have any evidence of devices that were connected into this electricity. I believe it has other applications. For example, with this Serpent Temple complex in Avebury, that electric field energy was being distributed into something called the sanctuary, which was designed to accumulate negative ions and ozone, which are used for therapeutic applications and healing. So there's a completely different aspect that we haven't even, it's part of my, dude, for us to do this properly, I would need like 8 hours
right.
to go through all of this material. So I have a slide deck ready for the Avebury Serpent Temple complex.
Where is this complex?
It's basically near the White Horse Hills in Wiltshire, England.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So all of these are a huge interconnected system. So remember, okay, so it's for chemical manufacturing. The most important process that we do in our modern world is manufacture chemicals. They are the basis of our entire modern civilization is chemistry. So it's incredibly important to our modern civilization, the production of chemicals. But we also have harnessing of electric field energy from lightning and terraforming. So they're literally turning a desert into a lush area of agricultural farmland. So it has all of the applications of electrical production, but then so much more.
Right. to feed the civilization that was there.
Everything. So we're not just producing mining chemicals. Remember, it's fertilizer, it's methane gas for heating and lighting and cooking and all of these sort of domestic applications. So you literally have a variety of chemicals that could sustain your entire civilization. Just the chemical manufacturing. Then you have a source of electric energy, not only for powering these chemical reactions, but also for therapeutic processes in these temples that we'll get to here in just a second, hopefully. And then you have terraforming, bringing these cumulonimbus thunderstorm clouds that rain. They also bear rain. So that's what I'm proposing, is that the Egyptian pyramids were involved in the terraforming of the Upper Eastern Sahara during the Saharan wet period. That by building these structures, they were creating more rain clouds that completely transformed the Sahara from a barren wasteland of sand into an area of lush agricultural development.
Wow. Okay.
So it has immense applications. And it's, again, to look at all of these three structures just on the Giza Plateau and only focus on the one, you're missing a huge part of the story. What were the other two doing? Why build the rest of this complex?
Right.
It's a huge complex that is connected underground. Again, the Tomb of the Birds, these underground mining tunnels that run below the Giza Plateau. What we can see above ground is only 50% of the story. There's so much more below the earth, underneath this temple complex, that will probably never be revealed, but we can only speculate on what's actually below there. But I've physically been down into the Tomb of the Birds, so I know that this does exist. And this tunnel is filled with all of this metallic ore, mineral deposits, and it looks like it's been leached out, just eroded out using acidic chemicals.
Wow, man.
And that's what these pits are on the Giza Plateau. So this is an image of these silicate microspherules that were discovered in the chemical analysis that was taken from around the trial passages, which are adjacent to the Great Pyramid, from fulgurites. So this is literally the closest evidence that we have that lightning was striking the area around the Great Pyramid. I believe it was striking the top of the structure directly. Those electric fields get distributed down into the bedrock, which is causing the creation of these fulgurites and these silicate microspherules.
Okay.
This sample was taken from around the trial passages, which you can see a diagram of here, which I believe was an intermediary pump station designed to pump these solutions across the Giza Plateau. Here's an area showing the opening of the trial passages, some of the iron ore where this sample was taken. So you see that red iron ore.
Right.
This stuff is all over the Giza Plateau, and it is eroded in such a way that is very indicative of acidic erosion. So I found it interesting that you mentioned that Dunn says it was coming from the pits into the Queen's Chamber, but I think it was the opposite direction. It was coming from the Queen's Chamber, flowing into these pits, and then down the plateau, converging in the Sphinx enclosure.
Okay.
Again, a close-up image of one of those silicate microspherules from the lightning strikes. All right, so now this is a paper. Again, I don't know why it's doing this, where the stuff that I highlighted is actually blocked out.
Can't see it, yeah.
yeah, but this paper, Telluric and Earth Currents, Lightning Strike Locations and Natural Resource Exploitation, is a whole research paper talking about how telluric currents have a controlling impact on lightning strike locations. And there's a significant relationship between solar and lunar phenomenon and the occurrence of lightning, which gets into the function of Stonehenge, which was also designed as a solar and lunar observatory for tracking these phenomenon so that they could predict when these lightning strikes were going to occur.
Okay. Let's dig in.
It's, again, the more I work on this, the more. So this is me investigating this huge iron oxide pit that's adjacent to the Central Pyramid.
Okay.
And this is just talking about, so again, I was talking about Stonehenge. This is an image of Stonehenge, solar and lunar observatory.
What is the conventional theory for Stonehenge?
Basically the same thing. That's a widely accepted explanation for Stonehenge. Is that it's a astronomical observatory.
Right.
But I believe it was also designed to harness these lightning strikes.
Okay.
But it was absolutely used as a tracking device so that they could plan the conjunction of these solar and lunar phenomenon and accurately predict when these lightning strikes were going to occur.
Near Stonehenge.
Correct. I believe in the center of the structure.
In the center. So is Stonehenge up on like a big hill?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was a central, it's now knocked over, and they call the center of Stonehenge a cell. And it's called the altar stone. Mm-hmm. It's now been toppled over, but it was originally the tallest of the stones inside of this structure, which would I believe would have been your obelisk or your pillar stone, your standing stone that harnessed these lightning strikes and distributed it into the bedrock.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the first White Horse Hill. You can see on the face of, you can't really see it in this picture, but there's a white horse inscribed in the side of the hill right there in that little depression.
When was that put there?
So that's a relatively modern addition.
Right.
And these were added to all of these hills where lightning phenomenon occurs naturally. As soon as I put out this episode, I was contacted by a ton of people that live in this area recounting that they used to watch thunderstorms move down these white chalk hills. And all of these hills are white chalk, which is the same chemical composition of limestone, but just a different geological process in the formation. So it's all calcium carbonate chalk, a dielectric material.
Is that similar to what you were saying accumulated on the insides of those shafts in the Great Pyramid? You said there was like a salt chalky substance.
That's calcium sulfate.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a reaction between sulfuric acid and limestone.
Okay.
So this is calcium carbonate chalk. The bedrock of all of these structures across England is all on a foundation of chalk bedrock. So Avebury is built on chalk. These White Horse Hills are built on chalk. Silbury Hill is made of chalk on chalk bedrock. And they selected these materials very intentionally because of these dielectric electric field storage properties. So you can see that the face of this hill has a scoop and an angle. I haven't tested it, but I would almost bet that this is the same angle as the slope of the face of the Great Pyramid.
51 point something
51
degrees.
and a half degrees,
Right.
correct, which is the ideal vector for sweeping a hot air front and a cold air front into the atmosphere that generates cumulonimbus clouds. So this is how the White Horse Hills of Wiltshire, England work. There was an obelisk or a standing stone at the top of the structure. You have the telluric currents flowing through the crust of the earth, causing dielectric polarization of the chalk material. So you have an accumulation of positive charges at the top and negative charges toward the bottom. This is going to attract your lightning strike, which chemically transforms the calcium carbonate into calcium oxide, releasing carbon dioxide. There's also a reservoir at the top of this hill, and there's a source of water running below this structure. There's modern water pumps at the bottom of this hill today. I think I have, the water pumps here.
Oh, wow.
So there's a water source where they could have pumped this water to the top of the hill to fill the reservoir. So the water pours down the face of the hill, and there's a chemical reaction that occurs between the calcium oxide and water to create calcium hydroxide, which releases an immense amount of heat. This is an incredibly windy area where there's wind currents sweeping off the surface of this hill. Very similar to what I kind of touched on with the Great Pyramid, where the black basalt floor adjacent to the Great Pyramid was heated. The air moving across that black basalt floor was swept into the atmosphere at the ideal angle to create this circulation of a hot air front and a cold air front that generates cumulonimbus clouds. This is exactly what's depicted here in this diagram, is that there is an interface between hot air front and cold air front that creates cumulonimbus clouds, lightning clouds. So again, it is a system for the generation. So first step is capturing naturally occurring lightning. That naturally occurring lightning is then distributed through the system to create a chemical reaction that creates more thunderstorm clouds and more lightning.
Wow.
The power source of all of these systems is a regenerative process where I said this at the beginning, that these structures were designed to operate in conjunction with the forces of the earth.
Right.
So they're using these naturally occurring electric currents from telluric currents. They're harnessing the electric energy from lightning, and the whole thing works in a cycle, producing more and more lightning, more and more thunderclouds.
Wow, man.
And so again, in a thunderstorm, when you have a lightning strike, you have accumulation of negative charges in the cloud itself, and you have accumulation of positive charges. Here you can see the white horse.
Yep.
And then in the right corner, you can see the obelisk. And in the top, you can see the reservoir at the top of the hill. And you can see that it looks like water was flowing down from that reservoir down the surface of the hill. You see that
Yep.
Fluid erosion?
Yep.
It's literally pouring from that reservoir down into this valley, causing that chemical reaction that generates calcium oxide and generates an immense amount of heat sweeping off of that hill front.
So you think that this site was essentially doing the same thing that the Great Pyramid was doing?
Correct.
It's just a rudimentary version of it.
Correct. Yeah. So I believe that there
But it was intentionally created that way.
Yes.
It was man-made.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So when we were hiking up this hill, both Alexa and I noticed that it appeared that the surface of this hill was terraformed. The whole hill could have possibly been man-made. And that's what we see in Silbury Hill, the proto-pyramid. It's the largest mound in Europe. It's a proto-pyramid that's made of chalk. And I'm pretty sure I have this in the slide deck, but this is just talking about this white horse symbol that permeates all of these ancient religions and mythology, symbolizing thunderstorm clouds and lightning. So on the surface of these ancient hills, they literally emblazoned it with the symbol, depicting exactly what the function of these things were.
Wow, man.
The white horse, the cumulonimbus cloud,
Right.
and lightning storm. So we talk about, you hear this mythology of secrets in plain sight. And there's a whole bunch of these white horse hills all over Wiltshire, England, that have the exact same configuration. You can see another one here on the right, where there's a scoop on the front of the hill, there's a scoop on the back of the hill, a reservoir at the top, and it featured a standing stone. So the exact same chemical reaction, lightning struck the standing stone, it was distributed into the chalk, creating calcium hydroxide, releasing heat. The water was pouring down the far side that you can see in this picture. You can see there's no outlet of the reservoir near the horse,
Right.
and there's also no erosion. But if you look at the other side, all of this has water erosion moving down the surface of the far hill.
Yeah.
The exact same function where the hot air system was sweeping off of the far side, the cold air front was coming off of the horse side, mixing in the atmosphere and creating cumulonimbus thunderstorm cloud. This is exactly what Randall Carlson was talking about. The slope angle of the Great Pyramid being the ideal vector for creating thunderstorm clouds. So they inevitably...
They tied all that mathematics and sacred geometry into that thunderstorm generator that Malcolm Bendall is working on.
Yeah.
But they have a great way of explaining it very fast with complex math.
Sure,
that basically that you get lost when you're trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
But
And I haven't delved into the mechanics of the thunderstorm generator, but I was watching your podcast with Randall, and he was talking about the slope angle. And then I knew that there was a connection between these two things. He's working on this modern machine, and it just so happens that it points to this exact same slope angle as being the ideal configuration for the generation of thunderstorm clouds.
right.
So again, there's interesting connections between my work and Dunn's work, my work and Randall Carlson's work, where it all works synergistically. The whole picture comes together. And I took this information from understanding the White Horse Hills of Wiltshire, England, and then I went back and I applied it to the Great Pyramid, and everything just clicked. The whole thing started to make sense. So again, the White Horse. This is Silbury Hill, a huge pyramid structure in very, very close proximity to these White Horse Hills. You can see that it also has a reservoir that was intended to be flooded. This is a huge hill that's made of chalk. And so you'll see here that the surface of this is flat.
Right.
That was intentional to allow the accumulation of positive charges at the top of the monument. So Yusuf and I, did a test. So he has a machine, this machine that you can see down here called the life force generator. And this is one of these machines, I don't understand the mechanisms of operation that make the machine work, but it's supposed to generate an electromagnetic energy field.
Okay.
So we tested the properties of stone in electromagnetic field experiment number 1, and it shows that the charges that are stored inside of the limestone can be released if you give it a conductor, that piece of copper. If you put that piece of copper up against the red granite, nothing happens because the electric field is being used to create ultrasound. The electric field is dissipated inside of the red granite, which is the exact function of the red granite, is to use that electric field for the production of ultrasound. So there's no discharge when you put the piece of copper next to the red granite, but there is a discharge when you put it next to the limestone. In electromagnetic field experiment number 1, we tested amorphous shapes of limestone, red granite, black basalt, and calcite crystal. In experiment number 2, I had Yusuf carve a pyramid shape of limestone, and that's what we're testing here. And as you move to the top of the pyramid, the discharge completely disappears because there's no surface area on the apex of a pyramid. That is why the Great Pyramid was intentionally left without a capstone to provide more surface area for the accumulation of electric fields. Exactly what you're seeing here is the accumulation of these electric fields at the top of the Great Pyramid. Boom, I do have it in here, I think.
If you hit escape on that keyboard, you'll be able to see them all.
I might not have that. I think I put it in a separate episode because it was so deserving of a separate episode. But in with using one of the wavelengths of electromagnetic energy, the top of the pyramid completely turns red, indicating the highest accumulation of electric field.
Right.
And it stops literally at the top of the pyramid, exactly like you see here. And the capstone is blue, indicating that there would be zero accumulation of electric field in the capstone, quote unquote capstone. So I believe it was intentionally left flat, exactly like Silbury Hill was left flat to allow the accumulation of these electric fields at the top of the structure. And this is again the paper that we were talking about before. Study reveals the Great Pyramid of Giza can focus electromagnetic energy, not only inside of the chambers, but also at the top of the structure.
Wow.
So you have lightning striking the top of the Great Pyramid. Okay, same accumulation of positive charges attracting these negatively charged lightning strikes. When you look at Silbury Hill, this massive mound of chalk, it's doing the exact same thing.
Right.
The telluric currents are flowing through the earth. Positive charges are accumulating at the top of the structure, attracting lightning. Same chemical reaction recurs, leaving calcium oxide. The reservoir is flooded, creating heat to create your thunderstorm clouds. And it just so happens that Silbury Hill at number 1 on this diagram is located next to a structure called Windmill Hill. It's a wind hill. So the hot air coming off of Silbury Hill was sweeping off of one side of Windmill Hill. So you have all of this heat energy coming off of Silbury Hill, sweeping up one side of Windmill Hill, and the cold air front is coming in off the other side, creating these cumulonimbus clouds.